There are moments inside the royal family that the world never sees, small, fragile moments that reveal the humanity behind the palace gates. But what happened on that quiet afternoon outside Windsor stunned everyone who witnessed it. A royal guard known for his unshakable discipline suddenly broke protocol and forced open a car door. Why? Because inside, Princess Charlotte was crying, really crying, and something was clearly wrong. And for a split second, the centuries-old rules of the crown collided with pure human instinct. If stories like this warm your heart or make you see the royal family in a new light, go ahead and tap like. And hey, subscribe if you want more real, emotional moments that rarely make the headlines. Share this video with someone who loves William, Kate, or Royal Guard stories. It helps more than you think it. No one expected anything unusual that afternoon outside Windsor. The air carried that soft, late-day calm, tourists drifting toward the gates, guards standing like carved statues, and the usual hum of cameras clicking from a distance. Everything looked ordinary until a single, quiet moment broke the rhythm. A royal convoy had just slowed near the side entrance. Nothing dramatic, nothing out of routine. Inside one of the cars sat Princess Charlotte. People often forget she's still just a child, living in a world where every move is watched, every expression captured by a lens. She was seated beside her nanny, looking out the window as children often do, half curious, half tired. But something shifted, something small but unmistakably wrong. One of the king's guards, an older, seasoned officer known for his rigid composure, noticed movement inside the car. At first it was subtle, Charlotte leaning forward, then her hand pressing against the glass. He wasn't supposed to react. Guards observe. They do not interfere unless instructed or the threat is clear. Yet, within seconds, her expression crumpled. Her small frame shook. And then came the unmistakable sight. Princess Charlotte crying, not the polite, quiet tears of a child who dropped a toy, but the sudden, frightened kind that grips the stomach. The guard's eyes narrowed. Something was very wrong. The nanny, seated beside Charlotte, reached for her, but the guard saw panic in her face too. And in that microsecond, instinct hit him like a punch. This wasn't royal ceremony. This wasn't protocol. This was a child in distress. He stepped forward. A guard stepping out of formation is already unusual. A guard approaching a royal vehicle uninvited? That almost never happens. There are layers upon layers of rules. They don't touch the cars. They don't open doors. They certainly don't intervene unless ordered by security command. But something about Princess Charlotte's cries stripped all those layers away. He moved again, this time faster. A nearby protection officer glanced at him sharply, ready to question him. But before a word could be spoken, the guard reached the car, placed his gloved hand under the handle, and forced it open with one decisive motion. Gasps came from tourists standing nearby. Even the police escort stiffened, unsure whether to pull him back or trust what he saw. And for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Inside the car, Princess Charlotte's face was red, her eyes brimming with tears. The nanny struggled with something. Her seatbelt buckle had jammed. It looked simple, even trivial, but to a child suddenly feeling trapped inside a lock belt, panic could flood in like cold water. Charlotte wasn't crying because she was hurt. She was crying because she felt stuck and frightened, a fear any child would feel. The guard gently leaned in, his voice low and steady, nothing like the powerful stance he usually held. He didn't reach for Charlotte at first. He assessed the situation, checked her breathing, then turned to the nanny, who quickly explained the buckle wouldn't release. He nodded once, pulled a multi-tool from his belt, a tool they carry for emergencies, though rarely used for something like this, and pressed the release mechanism. It clicked instantly. Charlotte gasped, the kind of sudden breath that comes after panic. The nanny wrapped an arm around her, soothing her quickly. The guard stepped back, giving them space, chest rising with controlled breaths. That moment felt long, but had barely lasted 20 seconds. Still, it sent shockwaves across everyone watching. This was not something royal guards do, ever. Even security officers seemed stunned. The captain approached the guard, whispering something quietly, likely asking what exactly prompted him to break formation. The guard, still steady but clearly aware of the magnitude of his actions, simply nodded toward Charlotte. "I saw her panic," he said, for simple words, enough to silence every criticism. Inside the car, Charlotte wiped her face, her breath slowing. She looked toward the guard, this towering figure of authority, and managed a small, thankful nod. Children don't understand protocol, titles, or centuries of tradition, but they understand when someone helps them. For the guard, that was more than enough. But here's where the moment becomes even more powerful. Everything in the royal family's world is choreographed, movements, timings, interactions. But sometimes, real life breaks through the script. And when it does, the people who serve them reveal a softer side the public rarely sees. A few minutes later, as the convoy prepared to move, Prince William himself arrived unexpectedly. He had been alerted immediately, as any parent would be. Calm but visibly concerned, he stepped toward the car, checked on Charlotte, and gave the nanny a reassuring nod. Then he turned toward the guard. Security officers braced, unsure how William would react. After all, a guard forcing open a royal vehicle door is a massive breach in protocol. Normally, it would trigger an investigation. But William's expression softened. "Thank you," he said quietly, placing a hand on the guard's shoulder. "You did the right thing. That wasn't filmed. That wasn't broadcast. It was simply witnessed by a handful of people who later described it as one of the most genuine moments they had ever seen from the future king." William understood something many observers forget. Behind the rules and rituals, these are still parents doing their best to raise children in an environment where nothing is private, nothing simple, and safety always hangs in a delicate balance. And for a moment, the hierarchy fell away. A parent saw a man who helped his daughter. A guard saw a child who needed comfort. Everything else was noise. What makes this moment so unforgettable isn't just the rule breaking itself. It's a reminder of how powerful instinct can be, how it pushes past training, past centuries-old customs, past the pressure of millions of eyes. Royal guards are trained to protect the monarchy at all costs. But sometimes protecting the monarchy means protecting a little girl who just feels scared. And you can't train someone to notice that kind of fear. That comes from the heart. As the convoy finally pulled away, Charlotte looked once more out the window. Calmer now. The guard returned to formation calmly. Though his pulse likely still raced beneath the uniform, he had no idea that within hours, whispers of what happened would spread, from witnesses outside the gate to staff members inside Windsor. And soon, the world would know too. A single moment of instinct, a single child in distress, a single guard who dared to act, and it changed the entire tone of that quiet Windsor afternoon. Most people only see the surface of royal protection, the polished boots, the perfect posture, the silent precision that never seems to crack. But behind that calm exterior lies a world shaped by discipline so strict it borders on myth. These guards aren't just ceremonial ornaments in bright uniforms. They're part of a complex security framework designed to shield the royal family from threats both seen and unseen. And yet, for all the rigid training, all the centuries of rules, something extraordinary happened on that day outside Windsor. A guard, sworn to protocol, broke it in an instant. Why? What was happening in his mind before he reached for that door? To understand that, you need to understand what royal guards are taught and what they're never supposed to do. Their training begins with silence, not the comfortable kind, but the intense, focused silence where every heartbeat feels like a clock ticking inside a steel chamber. Recruits stand for hours, sometimes in harsh weather, learning to control the urge to move, speak, or react. They're taught to be statues with a pulse, ever aware, never impulsive. Then comes the instinct training. They memorize threat patterns, study the behavior of crowds, and rehearse situations where a second determine life or death. They practice recognizing micro-expressions, tiny changes in posture, breath, and gaze that reveal danger before it fully appears. They become experts at reading what most people miss. So when a guard steps out of formation, it's not casual. It's not emotional impulse. It's instinct built on decades of repetition. But that day, something unusual happened. His training collided with something deeper, something no handbook prepares him for. Princess Charlotte's panic wasn't a security threat. in the traditional sense. There was no attacker, no weapon, no loud announcement. To an untrained eye, it might have looked like a child having a difficult moment. But the guard saw something else entirely. He saw distress. He saw fear. He saw a child feeling trapped. That's something no guard ignores. Royal guards are taught a principle known internally as immediate proximity compassion, a rarely discussed protocol that gives a minimal flexibility when a royal family is in psychological or emotional distress. It isn't written on public pamphlets, and most people never hear about it. But it exists for moments just like this. It states that if a royal child is in immediate emotional crisis that could accelerate into physical harm, panic, oxygen distress, or accidental injury, a guard is authorized to intervene without waiting for verbal command. But here's the catch. This guideline is almost never used. Guards fear misinterpretation. One wrong move, one step too far, and it could cost them their career. So what makes a guard choose compassion over caution? In this case, it was a combination of three things. One, the look on Charlotte's face. It wasn't a normal cry. It was the kind that squeezes the chest and makes breathing shallow. Panic-induced tears looked different, faster, more sudden, with trembling hands. The guard recognized it immediately. Two, the nanny struggle. He saw her tugging the seatbelt, unable to free it. That signaled urgency. To a trained security mind, entrapment panic is classified as a physical risk factor. 3. The locked car door. A jammed or locked door during a child's panic raises immediate red flags, especially for someone trained to prevent situations that can escalate. Put together, these three signs created a picture he simply couldn't ignore. But breaking formation wasn't a simple choice. In the world of royal protocol, every move a guard makes is weight. They answer to commanding officer, the protection unit, and ultimately to the crown. Every action is observed, evaluated, and recorded. So imagine the pressure in those few seconds. Imagine the internal conflict. Follow the rules or follow the instinct of a human being who sees a child in distress. The decision took less than a heartbeat. He moved, and while that motion looked smooth and controlled from the outside, inside his mind, adrenaline was exploding like fireworks. Not fear adrenaline, the kind that sharpens decisions, not clouds them. What the public saw was a brave gesture. What the security world saw was a calculated, rapid assessment followed by protective action. But here's where things get even more powerful. Royal guards often speak privately about one unspoken truth. When they serve, they develop a personal connection to royal family, not emotional attachment, but a sense of guardianship. They watch the princes and princesses grow up. They witness their smiles, their nervous moments, their shy waves. They learn their personalities, their habits, their gestures. So when Charlotte cried like that, unexpected, overwhelming, something inside the guard pulled him forward, not as a ceremonial protector, not as a soldier, but as a human whose instinct was to help a child. Protocol teaches discipline. Instinct teaches compassion. And for the first time in his long career, one overruled the other. Once he forced open the car door, something almost unheard of in modern royal security. Several things happened simultaneously. Security officers moved toward him but hesitated, reading the situation. The nanny exhaled in relief. Charlotte's tears slowed the moment she was freed, and the guard maintained control, stepping back instead of hovering, allowing the nanny to comfort her. His restraint afterward mattered just as much as his bravery. He didn't touch Charlotte unless necessary. He didn't panic. He didn't shout. He acted with the calm precision of someone who has been trained not only to protect, but to preserve dignity. And that's a detail often overlooked. Royal children grow up in a world where privacy is scarce. Being rescued publicly could embarrass them. The guard knew that, so he moved in a way that minimized the spectacle, fast, calm, without drawing attention to himself. The tourists who saw it described a strange feeling in the air, a mix of shock and respect, as if they'd witnessed something both rare and deeply human. But here's the question many people asked afterward. Would he get in trouble? The truth is, royal security rarely comments on internal discipline. But what we do know is that Prince William's immediate, calm response changed everything. A future king standing before a guard, thanking him personally, sends a message more powerful than any written protocol. It signals trust, it signals respect, and it signals approval. And within the palace, approval from William speaks louder than any rule book. Later that day, the guard reportedly gave a brief statement to his captain. Nothing dramatic, simply the facts, spoken with the humility of someone who didn't think he'd done anything extraordinary. All he said was, "She was scared. I acted." 8 words, a lifetime of meaning. When duty meets instinct, there's always tension. But in rare moments like this, instinct wins, and history remembers those moments far longer than the rules that were broken. And that's why this incident spread so quickly among staff, guards, and insiders. It wasn't scandalous. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply human. One guard, one child, one choice, and a quiet reminder that behind the crown and ceremony, kindness still leads the way. Inside royal circles, moments of crisis reveal who people truly are. And when it comes to William and Kate, those who work closest to them often say the same thing. They're calm in chaos, gentle in tense moments, and fiercely protective of their children. But nothing quite prepared them for the message that reached them that afternoon. William had been in a brief internal meeting at Windsor, routine, uneventful, when one of the senior protection officers leaned in and whispered a quiet update. "There's an issue with Princess Charlotte. Minor, but immediate." Any parent knows that even the word minor doesn't stop the heart from tightening. William stood instantly. Meetings can pause. Duties can wait. In the hierarchy of his world, fatherhood sits above everything. He moved quickly toward the courtyard, and staff members who saw him pass described the same thing. He wasn't running, but he wasn't walking either. He had that determined, focused pace he gets when something matters, a pace that signals urgency without panic. When he reached the car, he saw Charlotte, small, teary, clinging to the nanny's side as her breathing steadied. And beside her, standing just slightly back in formation, was a guard who had intervened. The moment William saw his daughter's face, the kind of face every parent recognizes after a scare, his expression softened. He crouched beside her, touched her shoulder, spoke quietly. Only the nanny and Charlotte heard the words, but those nearby could tell from William's tone that reassurance was his priority, not protocol. Charlotte nodded slowly, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. She wasn't sobbing anymore, just recovering as children do, fast but visibly shaken. Then William stood and turned toward the guard. Now, this moment is something insiders talk about later because of its unusual tenderness. From a distance, it looked simple, just a father acknowledging a man who helped his child. But within royal security culture, these gestures carry tremendous weight. William approached him, not as the future king, not as the Duke of Cambridge, but simply as a father grateful for a moment of humanity. He placed a firm hand on the guard's shoulder. "Thank you," he said. "You did exactly what was needed." Those nearby say the guard remained composed, but a flicker of emotion crossed his eyes, the kind a soldier rarely shows. In his world, small gestures of gratitude are rarer than medals. And then Kate arrived. She had been in another part of the residence, reviewing a briefing, when word reached her. Though Kate is known for her grace in public, staff say she moves with lightning speed when it involves her children. Her steps quickened as she approached the scene. She called Charlotte's name gently, arms open, voice warm but edged with concern. Charlotte reached for her immediately, wrapping her small arms tightly around her mother's waist. That hug! It lasted longer than usual. Kate leaned down, rubbing Charlotte's back in slow circles, whispering something soothing while checking her hands, her cheeks, her breathing, motherly instinct in every motion. When Charlotte finally pulled back, Kate brushed a hand over her hair and kissed the top of her head. Then, like William, Kate turned her attention to the guard. For a brief moment, everyone around them seemed to pause, not because the moment was formal, but because it was profoundly human. Kate stepped closer, meeting the guard's eyes directly. "I heard what you did," she said softly. "Thank you for helping her so quickly." Those who witnessed it said her voice carried that quiet sincerity she's known for. Never dramatic, never performative, just real. A mother speaking from the heart. The guard bowed his head respectfully. "It was my duty, ma'am," he said. But Kate shook her head lightly. "No," she replied. "It was kindness." That sentence spread among staff members faster than any formal statement ever could. The Princess of Wales telling a guard his action wasn't just duty, it was kindness, create a ripple effect inside the palace. Moments like this define the relationship between the royals and the people who protect them. It builds trust stronger than any contract. But the story didn't end there. After the convoy was cleared and the scene returned to order, William asked for a brief private moment with the security supervisor. Not to reprimand, not to question, but to make something clear. "This incident doesn't get turned into trouble for him," he said. A simple statement, but sharp enough to cut through the usual chain of review. The supervisor nodded. William's word carried authority that transcended protocol. Meanwhile, Kate stayed with Charlotte, walking hand in hand back toward their private quarters. Staff around them noticed how Kate slowed her pace intentionally, matching her daughter's steps. She listened as Charlotte talked through what happened, her small voice explaining the stuck buckle, the sudden moment of fear, the quick rescue. Kate didn't rush her. She didn't dismiss the fear as childish. She let Charlotte express it. That's something both parents are known for, treating their children's emotions as real and important, not something to brush aside in the name of image or duty. Later that evening, when the palace quieted, insiders say Kate sat beside Charlotte on her bed, reading to her, letting her settle into sleep with comfort instead of lingering anxiety. These are the quiet, unseen parenting moments that rarely make headlines but shape the emotional heartbeat of the royal household. Meanwhile, William requested a short update from the protection officer, not as a critique, but to ensure the guard was supported. William believed strongly that morale matters, and that acknowledgement can prevent doubt from eroding confidence. When he heard the guard was back at his post, composed but reflective, William simply nodded. "Good," he said. "Make sure he knows we're grateful." And that gratitude didn't fade overnight. The next morning, while reviewing the daily brief, Kate reportedly revisited the moment with a senior aide. She mentioned the guard specifically, not by rank or role, but by describing the way he reacted. "He acted with heart," she said. "People should know that." Those words weren't meant for headlines. They weren't part of an official statement. They were simply her genuine reflection. And yet, that sentiment carried, whispered from staff to staff, until the whole palace knew. The royal family doesn't measure loyalty only by discipline. They measure it by humanity. That's the kind of leadership William and Kate practiced quietly. Never dramatic, always sincere. And the guard's quick action revealed something important about them as parents. They want their children protected not with rigid rule following, but with instinct, compassion, and genuine care. There's something powerful in that, something real, because behind the titles and ceremonies, William and Kate aren't just figures of history. They're parents. They're humans. And in moments like these, they show it more clearly than any royal portrait ever could. News inside the royal sphere travels faster than any headline. Before the story ever reached the public, whispers moved through Windsor's staff corridors like a soft breeze, carrying something unexpected. People spoke quietly, almost reverently, about the guard who had stepped out of formation, about what he'd done, how quickly he'd acted, and how William and Kate reacted with such genuine gratitude. But outside the palace walls, the world had no idea. Not yet. At first, only a handful of tourists and bystanders who witnessed the moment shared their experience. A short post, a blurry picture, a fragment of a sentence typed out with shaking fingers. A royal guard just opened Princess Charlotte's car door. Something happened. She was crying. It looked serious. Even with no official details, people felt the weight of it. There was something undeniably emotional about the rare sight of a guard abandoning centuries-old formality to help a frightened child. Within hours, social media picked it up. At first, it was confusion, then concern, then admiration. One comment read, "You could see he moved like a father would. No hesitation." Another said, "Protocol means nothing when a child is scared. That guard deserves recognition." But what struck people most wasn't the incident itself. It was the humanity behind it. The world has grown used to flawless royal appearances, choreographed events, and carefully managed imagery. Moments like this, raw and unscripted, remind people that behind the palace walls are real families dealing with real emotions. By the time the story reached morning headlines, the narrative had shifted from speculation to praise. Reporters didn't know every detail, but they knew enough. A royal guard had taken swift action to comfort and assist Princess Charlotte during a tense moment. And both William and Kate had responded with warmth and appreciation. Public reaction was overwhelmingly positive. This shows the royals trust their team. That guard deserves a medal. Charlotte's safety comes first. Protocol can wait. People connected with the story because it felt authentic, not polished or carefully curated. It revealed a piece of the royal world rarely seen. The delicate, emotional realities of raising children under constant watch. While the media buzzed, inside the palace there was a quieter, more introspective response. The guard, after finishing his shift, didn't go home to applause. He went home to silence. The kind of silence that follows an emotional day when adrenaline has faded and reflection sets in. He replayed the moment in his mind. Charlotte's frightened cry, the jam buckle, the quick decision, and the overwhelming sense of responsibility. Did he doubt himself? Yes. Did he wonder if he had crossed a line? Of course. Anyone in his position would. But then, something unexpected happened. His supervisor called him in, not for reprimand, but for a simple message. The prince has asked that you receive commendation for your rapid judgment. It wasn't a formal award. It wasn't a ceremony. It was a private acknowledgement, but one that carried tremendous meaning. In the guard's world, quiet words from the future king echo louder than any public medal. Kate, too, ensured her gratitude reached him again, through a written note delivered discreetly by a palace aide. The message wasn't long, but it was deeply personal. In it, she thanked him for his courage, his instinct, and his kindness toward Charlotte. Those who saw the note said it felt warm, handwritten, and unmistakably genuine. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, royal security teams briefly reviewed the event, as they must with any unexpected breach of structure. But this time, the tone was different. Instead of critique, there was discussion about reinforcing compassion, flexibility. Those rare moments where protocol bows to human instinct. One senior officer reportedly said, his decision protected a child's emotional well-being. That's as important as protecting the body. It was one of the first times such language appeared in internal conversations. As for Charlotte, the incident didn't overshadow her spirits for long. Children recover quickly, and her parents made sure she felt safe, understood, and not embarrassed. The next day, she was back to her bright self, chatting, playing, and walking with that little bounce in her step that the public adores when she's seen in official appearances. But something quietly shifted for her as well. Insiders say she later pointed out the guard to one of her aides and said softly, "He helped me." That small acknowledgement showed the impact one kind act can have on a child who lives under extraordinary pressure. William and Kate, too, seemed more reflective in the following days. They discussed the incident in private, how easily fear can strike a child, how professional their team was, and how proud they were of the guard's instinctive bravery. They agreed on one thing. This moment showed the strength of their staff's loyalty, not through rigid obedience, but through humanity. When the story eventually made it into public news cycles, royal commentators analyzed it from every angle. But surprisingly, there was no scandal, no criticism, no political spin. Instead, the world reacted with warmth. Parents everywhere connected with the moment. They understood how frightening it can be for a child to feel trapped, even briefly. They understood how instinct takes over when a child cries. And they admired the guard for doing what any caring adult would do, regardless of the crown watching overhead. In the end, the story became something rare. A royal moment that united people instead of dividing them. A glimpse of vulnerability inside a famously guarded world. A reminder that humans, not titles, make the royal family relatable. Weeks later, when the guard resumed his post outside Windsor, tourists looked at him differently. Some recognized him. Some offered small smiles. A few whispered, "Thank you," though he always remained silent in return. But inside his chest, a quiet sense of pride lingered, not boastful, but steady. He didn't act for recognition. He acted because the child was scared. And in that split second, His heart moved faster than protocol ever could. History won't mark the day as a major royal event. There were no official photos, no grand ceremony, no public speeches. But for those who witnessed it, and for the family at the center of it, it stands out as one of those rare moments where instinct, courage, and compassion intersect. A moment where a guard became more than a uniform. A moment where a princess was comforted not by a system, but by a human. A moment where royalty and reality touched for just a breath. And in the gentle space of that moment, something unforgettable happened. A scared little girl felt safe again. A guard followed his heart. And the world, even for a brief time, remembered the simple power of kindness.